Hey everybody, I'm Howard, and this is Otter's Retirement Corner. So when I was doing my video recently about our car buying experience, I had mentioned that the car was for my wife and that she was paying for it. And I got many comments about, why do I have separate finances from my wife? Why was she paying for it instead of we pay for it, or me pay for it, or whatever other combination of payments there could have been. So that happened. I thought, you know what? I really don't see many videos on YouTube or anywhere else that really talks about the topic of how spouses run their finances in retirement. And then, as I was thinking about doing this video just Saturday or Sunday, I was at a softball tournament and I overheard one of my teammates talking to somebody else about his finances with his wife. So I sidled on over there and I asked him about it. And he said not only do he and his wife keep their finances separate, he has no clue what she has. He said, back before the mortgage crisis in 2008, he kind of knew what she was making, and she was in the mortgage industry, but that all fell apart obviously in 2008, 2009, and thereafter. So he has no clue. So it got me thinking, I need to ask you guys, what are you doing, how are you doing it, why are you doing it? And I want to talk a little bit about, answering the questions that people had for me, why we do what we do. And I think we all learn from our parents. So when I was growing up, my parents liked to keep their finances secret. And I had a fight to get any information out of them. And the thing I would notice is there'd be one checking account. So clearly, when I was young, my dad was the only one working. So all the money went into that checking account. Later on, my mother was working. So it seemed like all the money went into one checking account. And as far as I knew, that's where all their money was. Were either of them hiding money? I could see my father doing it. I don't know that my mother would have done that. So, there were always fights about, hey, why did you spend this money? What's this check for? There's nothing written here. All the arguments typically people have in marriages about money. So the way I learned it was, you got married, you put all your money together, and whoever wrote a check for whatever it is they needed. I didn't know how they decided what to buy or what not to buy or what rules they had. So fast forward now, I get married at age 55. My wife was 43 at the time. So she had been married once before. I had not. She had not only a bad financial relationship with her husband, but with one or two boyfriends before who took a lot of money from her. Not took, but asked for, got, never paid back, never saw them again type of thing. Her husband was very bad at finances and spent a lot of money he shouldn't have been spending. So she had a trust issue. Perfectly understandable. So I compare that to other marriages, and here's the big difference. When you're working and when you're retired, finances can be very different. And I'm not saying they should or shouldn't be. I'm just saying what research I could find is mostly on people who are still working. And very often people come together after they've been working for a while, so they have their own accounts. And it's sometimes difficult to combine them. But what I read is most couples have some sort of combined checking account that they both use, and then they both have something a little bit on the side, and maybe their investments are separate because they started their own 401ks or IRAs, and they were separate coming into a marriage. And as money's coming in and they're building up these accounts, these savings, these investments, or their checking account, it's kind of easy for the momentum just to keep going that way. I suggested to my wife after many years, about 3 years ago actually, why don't we just put all our money into one account and we don't have to worry who's paying what and why. She still didn't want to do that. So, I think there's still, with a lot of people, trust issues. I'm not, my wife swears up and down she trusts me. I have no reason not to believe her. It's just kind of easier to follow the momentum at this point, I guess, is what it is. So, it's hard to say at one point, this is my money, and now oh, I'm giving it to you or you're giving it to me and we're combining it. Now it's our money. So I've sort of lost my hold of it, I think. And I'm just spitballing here. I'm just trying to figure, the things I've gone through in life and, some conversations I've had with other people, why this happens. I do think it comes down to trust in a lot of marriages. And, then there's laws. Everything I've made since we've been married is split 50-50 should we divorce. And the outlook of divorce is certainly part of this. People don't want to give up their money, then get in a divorce and lose that money just because it wasn't clear where that money came from. So, the question is, how much you trust your spouse, how much do you think you're going to be married versus how much you think you're going to be divorced at some point, or the possibilities of those things. And again, I'm asking you, I'm not telling you. These are just all the thoughts that have gone through my head from the conversations I've had. So why would a spouse insist on separate finances? It varies. Here's what we do. My wife and I keep everything separate. Everything she's saved in her life, her checking account, her investment account, whatever she has is in her name. Everything I've saved in my life, my investment accounts, my checking account, I have a deferred salary account, they're all in my name. Everything she has, I'm listed as a beneficiary. Everything I have, she's listed as beneficiary. Whoever dies first, the other spouse is going to get everything. Now, this becomes complicated where people are married, especially second marriages, where there may have been children from previous marriages. They want their money possibly to go to their children rather than their stepchildren. And maybe that's why they want to keep it separate. There's a whole lot of legal issues here, and I'm not going to break those down. I'm just discussing possible reasons why people would do what they do. So my wife and I, and we'll call her Mrs. Otter, these are the things she pays for: TV, internet, all our dog expenses, entertainment. We go to movies or whatever. She, whatever we spend at Costco, typically $200 to $300 a month, she'll pay for that, and she'll pay for our cell phones. Me, I pay for the electric, the water, the property taxes, pretty much everything that has to do with the household and food. Now, we both have separate expenses. We both have separate health insurance. I have Medicare, she has commercial insurance. We buy clothes, we have cars, we pay for our car insurance. We each pay for individual gas expenses and car maintenance. Whatever we have individually, we pay for individually. And it works. It doesn't matter to me if there's some big expenditure. We just spent $9,000 for tile on our floors downstairs. We removed our carpet. I paid for it. She could have paid for it. It doesn't matter to me because we're leaving everything to each other. So it doesn't matter where the money comes from. We don't have children to worry about or think about or leave money to. We're kind of in a quandary right now. If we both die, where do we leave our assets? If one dies before the other, we're going to have to get a will and figure that out, because then we'll have both persons' money. But it's far more complicated for most of you, I'm sure. So I'm interested in hearing about this. Again, I couldn't get any figures on what percentage of couples keep their money separate. Before retirement, it may be as many as 40% have separate accounts. It's gray as to whether they have secret separate accounts. That may be far more than 40%. But tell me what you're doing. I think this is an interesting topic that needs more discussion, and I'd like to hear what you guys do. So let me know in your comments. Again, if you like my videos, please subscribe, like, the whole thing. Thanks. We'll talk to you next time. Bye.